the back of the line concept. I bring it up again just because I'm sitting here thinking, I remember going back, I'm not using the Arnold thing for an example all the time, but it was a good example because you had so many different media outlets there. But I remember there was a point where they kept giving, the campaign kept giving the Schwarzenegger campaign kept giving the interviews to the same couple of reporters because they were trying to get them on their side. They kept trying, and finally, I remember going up to, I forgot who it was, it may have been Daryl, I don't know if he's Daryl Ing or Rob Stutzman, one of them, and I said to him, I said, you know what? I go, it's okay to put someone in the back of the line if they're not going, because the fact is, I'm not up here kissing your candidate's butt, but I'm also being fair. When the accusation came out about groping, I gave him the option to speak, and he gave, and I made it a very fair report. Just so it's almost like, so I guess my suggestion to you is, because you know you have a fair reporter, don't bury him. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's going to, in the long run, it almost got to the point where I was like, well, I should just attack him like everybody else, because all of a sudden I'm going to the back of the line. I'm like, I'm doing my job. So I guess in the instance where you're trying to get someone on your side, don't get rid of the ones or push aside the ones that are actually already being fair.
That's a very good
alienate, yeah.
So what do you think 2020 holds for reporters?
Remember what Clubber Lang said when he was asked about what to expect with the fight with Rocky? He said one word: pain.
Yeah.
It's already started.
Yeah.
So that's probably, and more pain than we've ever experienced before. I mean, you're on the front lines, you know what I'm talking about. But listen, I'm in a different role now. Like we're covering 2020. We are an early state, so we get a lot of attention. I'm in a different role, but already we're just getting bombarded. We've had, we won't get as many in the early going as Iowa and New Hampshire, but we've had a lot of visits already, and they come at you in all kinds of different ways. And some of them are really good at what they do, and some of them are not so good. And the over-promising that occurs is going to be something that happens. But I just think that this Democratic primary is going to be so insane and so vicious. I mean, we just had a story. All of you know about this, the latest allegations about Joe Biden. That came from a former Nevada assemblywoman. And I was just talking about this beforehand. And all of the Twitter traffic was, oh my God, look at this and how awful Joe Biden is. Then it was, oh, wait a second. She once supported Bernie. She was put up to this. She can't be telling the truth. When I tried to put out what I thought was a series of measured tweets analyzing the situation and talking a little bit about how she was thought of in the state, I mean, the fury was just unbelievable, including from some journalists who said, you can't say that about somebody who's made Me Too allegations. And I think this is the kind of thing where we can never stop being journalists. The world has changed in so many ways, but if we don't have the same standards, you have to vet every allegation before you publish it. You have to really be careful. And it's tough because of everything that we've talked about on this panel, the velocity of information, the desire to be first, and so there's going to be a lot of pain, Beth, a lot of pain.
We have a question.
Yeah, hi. I see that there's 2 TV people and 2 new media people up on the panel, but there's people who are missing, and that's print.
What is that?
They buy ink by the gallon, by the barrel. Anyway, so not everybody.
In all fairness, we did have a print reporter who got sent on assignment.
Okay.
And because of my relationship with Adam Housley, who
I was pouring wine this morning. I got a phone call.
he lives in Napa now, and I said, wait a minute, and he was gracious enough to join us. So thank you again.
Well, my point is this, and you've also been talking about national races and high-level state races, and not all the people who work in this room work on those campaigns. They work on lower ticket races. They work on county commissioner races. I happen to manage a congressional campaign in this last election cycle, which is a very rural district in Arizona. It's also a Cook R plus 21, and I ran a Democratic candidate's campaign. Now, so you can guess what kind of shot we had. But we ran an ad that was the Gosar siblings ad, and it got us a tremendous amount of recognition. In fact, the video had 800,000 YouTube watches in the first 48 hours.
Wow.
That said, we could not get the local newspapers throughout our entire district to write a single story about it. We got no coverage from any traditional media, no statewide media as a result of that, and we had no coverage at all on any of the issues and all the town halls that we did. In fact, one of the, after the GOSAR ad came out, we called the editor of the local paper and he said, well, do something newsworthy and we'll cover you. I don't know how you do anything more, newsworthy than point out your opponent's failings in a congressional campaign. Now, the problem is exacerbated by the fact that we are developing news deserts throughout the United States. There are local communities who have no coverage. And so while I appreciate the work that you guys are doing at the high-level state and national races, I'd really like to hear how you guys intend on covering the rural races that nobody's hearing about, because there are people in Congress of both parties who should not be in Congress. There are people.
I would say there's two. I got two responses to you right away. One is relationships again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds crazy, but if you'd contacted me, even at Fox, if you had the ability to, even on Twitter, I can't tell you, I've been gone for 4.5 months, 5 months. I'm still tweeting stuff up. I still have 107,000 followers. I'll be getting back in the news at some point. I still get hit up all the time. I have a guy right now, used to be a police officer in LA, who's got some conspiracy theory, but it's still, he has the ability to, oh, it's crazy. It's like he sent me 12 pages. I'm like, no wonder you're not in the force anymore. But okay, well, but did you know, was it cold though? That's the thing, was it cold turkey? No. Okay. The other.
We contacted all of the editors.
Right.
At the beginning of the campaign. We sent them press releases. We sent them, everything we did, we sent out to them.
You have
we got nothing.
Now for the local stuff, you got to spoon feed.
You really, you have to.
No, I mean, you have to create the event.
We did.
Did you have a watch event where you brought in a bunch of people from the community to watch it, actually watch the video, put it up on one of these screens? It sounds crazy, you have to do this nowadays, but you bring in 300 or 400 people, and then you have them, if no one shows up, tweet. How come the Register Star is not here? How come you watch how quickly they'll turn around? Because the Register Star and those guys, the print's not making money anymore. They're having to go online. So you got to beat it. I hate to say you have to shame them into not being there, but you kind of have to shame them into not being there. Where's the Register Star? Why are they not here? Have everybody tweet it, get it out there, and if it's digital, you watch how quickly they will show up because they have no other way to make money.
But there may be more to it than that. First of all, we need to consider that maybe you're not very good. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The real issue, of course, from the answer was in your description. It was about the news deserts, which is one of the reasons I started the Nevada Independent. We cover mostly state and local, except when national. But if you're trying to prioritize what you're going to cover, and you see a district that you described the way that you described it doesn't look competitive at all, I'm going to put that way at the bottom of what I'm going to prioritize for my coverage. You probably suffered from that, I'm guessing. So you have to do what Adam said. You have to be creative. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily sure that trying to shame through Twitter is going to work, but it might.
For the locals,
but it might. And you got to be creative and high. That video, if it got that many views, it sounds like it was a pretty damn good product. I am surprised that you couldn't push that out into the mainstream. I would have been interested in it, even as an editor of a publication. Wow, look at all those views. Let's take a look at this. This might be worth a little story or so. So I'm really surprised that you couldn't push that out.
Yeah, part of our coverage area, we have rural communities, Stanislaus County, Modesto, Stockton. That's not the big Sacramento races. It doesn't have a lot of that flair. We still cover those. We have a candidate that's challenging a congressional member who's a freshman who was, had a lot of backing from Nancy Pelosi. He had an event this weekend. News stations on the weekends are not staffed like they normally are. We have one photographer and one reporter. And you reach out to that campaign, you say, hey, can you send me some pictures and we'll run something on it? Can you send me how many people were there? What are your fundraising numbers? It's about that contact in those relationships, just hammering it, that at some point something will give.
What part, how rural was that area again? Where were you at?
It's 7 rural counties. It's basically northern and western Arizona.
Okay. So Yuma is Yuma your group, station group there? Well, Yuma's only got 2 TV news stations, I believe, anymore. I think they're a duopoly, so it's really only one news outlet, if I remember right.
But most of the cable channels don't cover
But no, they don't go there.
Yeah, they don't go
The only way you get that on TV, candidly, is to find an MSNBC, to Fox News. Fox might put it on and go, wow, look at these guys. MSNBC would have been like, wow, look at these guys. That's, I mean, we do put those things on the air. Well, that's pretty good right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hi. So my name is Pat Riley. I'm with Change Research, and we do fast and accurate public opinion polling at 80 to 90% less than traditional methodologies. 538 issued a call a couple weeks before the 2018 election saying they'd love to know what to report on 40-odd conservative, mostly R districts, but nobody had done polling there. They had no real insight on what was happening in some of these races. You had 2018, you had a huge influx of voters, record number engagement on both sides of the fence. AOC definitely didn't have the same political connections or relationships that Joe Crowley did, right? So my question is, what technology tools and insights are each of you using to make sure that you're seeing these stories that are just below those relationships, those trusted political relationships that you might know for many years, to reflect some of the new faces and new candidates that are coming on board? And I think will still come on board in 2020. I'd love to hear from each of you. Either resources like the Cook Political Report, or technologies that are not platforms where you're going out and finding some interesting insights to report on.
I mean, in terms of you want like online. I mean, I've actually had some younger candidates that are running contact me, like Adam was talking about, through Instagram. Hey, I'm about to run in this local county commissioner race, or I'm going to run for mayor. Or, I mean, a lot of the younger candidates are using social media platforms, or some of those relationships. I'll get contacted word of mouth. This person's going to run, you know, or there's this ballot initiative coming up, or have this on your radar. That's how I get a lot of my information, is through either Facebook or Instagram, that people contact me, or through people that I know.
for that, I would say, well, first of all, part of the reason why we had the situation in 2018 was you have such a controversial figure at the top, and not just one in both parties, really talking about the leadership of both parties, separate from the president. Everybody's so focused on that, and it's such a interesting dogfight, and just the tweets and the insanity of all of it, unfortunately, I think has clouded some of the lower areas where people aren't paying attention. So you could have had polling there, you could do whatever you want to. I think a lot of people slip through the cracks because, listen, Americans are busy, rightfully or wrongfully. We don't pay attention as much as we should. And I think that a lot of times we get yanked one way or the other, especially if you're in one party or another and you miss that. So that's, I think, one variable to bring in. For me, I'm all about Instagram and Twitter. I mean, I do follow, I go to my sites in the morning, even though I've been gone for 5 months, and I'm still kind of in it and doing some stuff coming up. It's had a chance for me to kind of step back a little bit, and it's definitely Instagram and Twitter are where I get a lot of stuff. I mean, you're getting AOC, for example. If you were monitoring Instagram more than even Twitter, you would have seen her energy very quickly, and the power behind people following her. And it's simple to actually follow this stuff. And I think a lot of people in this room may know, in the news industry, we're completely clueless. We're the last ones to do anything. I was the first one to get a BlackBerry at Fox. I was the first one to get an iPhone, myself and Greta Van Susteren. And when we weren't top, but we were, I'd say the rest of the company get BlackBerries for a year and a half after we had them. Point is, the news industry is always last to adopt, partly because we're cheap. True. True. So, a lot of people don't understand how these things, we do now, but even still, you'll go to a newsroom and they'll say, he's a tweeter, that kind of thing, and you still don't. No, not tweaker, a tweet. So you get, there's actually a lot there. And if you were following, for example, on Instagram, and you were to look at her likes and to look at the integration going on there, and that's people, a lot of times you'll flip through and you may like it, but you don't realize, you look at the comments, that's the other thing. And then look at the connection between how many people they follow. Oh, wow, they have 45,000 followers. Oh, wait, they're following 42,000 people. Oh, they have 45,000 followers. Oh, they're only following 1,000 people. That's a much different individual. So I think that the news industry doesn't really quite get that as well. But at least for us, I'm pretty sure that just hearing them talk today, that's really Instagram, Twitter are still two of the most powerful. I think that's where you're getting a lot of the vibe from. And
I think also too, when you talk about pitching those stories and trying to get, we have to go into a room and I pitch political stories every single day. and I sit in a room with 10 other people who are like, I have this doorbell camera where a guy takes his pants off, that's going to win over my polling data
Every time.
every single day of the week. So I really have to get in there and be like, okay, there's this rural community, it has 8,000 views, the guy's been on Kimmel. Those things, if you're putting out that information, that's going to be a light bulb in that news director, that managing editor's head, instead of being like, well, I got some new polling data and it shows that this person raised this much money, and I've lost the room at that point.
There was a good one off of that when I was in Sacramento, where you are now, where the governor at the time, I think it was Gray Davis, yeah, it was Davis, would have been, was pushing a new power plant initiative, and okay, right away, everyone falls asleep in the newsroom. But the person that was doing the PR for him was in your industry. I forgot who it was. It wasn't a government employee, obviously, but it was somehow been hired from the outside. And they put together a plan to say, here's what time you show up. Here's the video we're going to give you. You're going to put a hard hat on. You're going to see cars being crunched. I mean, gave me this great description that I walked in and I was like, this is a no-brainer. Boom. And we covered a power plant opening. And that would have never, ever happened. A doorbell camera would have made it.
Yeah.
You know? And so,
If the doorbell camera was a city councilman, though, then you get everything.
Everybody.
wearing a MAGA hat, that would have been awesome. Like,
Check all the boxes.
We really have time for one more, and I promised it to Millie.
I have some credibility because I sleep with a journalist, and
Oh,
and Terry,
okay.
he's print, so it's all good, it's all good. But
I'm sorry.
he's old. The ultimate accountability for the candidates is the polling booth. But sometimes it's because they get an unfair break because the ref sucks.
Why are you pointing at me?
Because you use that metaphor, sir. I just want to ask you really quickly, and I know you have to end, Beth. What do you think should be the accountability for journalists, for you all? I know how it works for the candidates, fair or unfair. I don't know how it works for you all.
I mean, it depends on each newsroom, each organization is different, but I mean, there is a vetting process that we go through in terms of we hold ourselves accountable, but we also have executive producers, news directors, assistant news directors. I mean, there are things that go through layers, and you know what? We do make mistakes. And now, more than ever, those mistakes, if you make one, like we had a lower third last night, the graphic on the bottom of the screen, we're doing a story about the cherry blossoms in DC blooming early. I'm reading the story, I happen to look down at the monitor, blossoms is spelled wrong. That little and I'm snapping my fingers and waving my hands and looking like a crazy person trying to get him to take it out. But that little mistake right there, we got 6 calls into the newsroom. I'm never watching you guys again because of that story over cherry blossoms. But, and that just shows that we're under even more scrutiny than ever. So we have to really take the time in this 24-hour, get it on the air. It's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, the competitors have it, to really flesh things out and make sure we're right. We do have checks and balances. Sometimes they fail.
I mean, I would just say that, for the most part, we're always trying to make sure that whatever story you're writing, that it can stand, it can withstand the scrutiny. Obviously, you want to be accountable by I think you see it more often now. People used to just update stories electronically if they had an error in it and not say anything. Now it's, there's a correction, there's a clarification, you're noting it. But just like we were talking earlier about holding public officials accountable, people hold us accountable. I mean, if you tweet something that's erroneous, or even if it's factual, but the way you phrased it, they're not so, one of my colleagues got just pounded a couple weeks ago because of the way he phrased something that some women found sexist. He did not intend that, but they just hammered him. So it's instantaneous in a lot of ways.
I think the question, though, probably goes more to what I consider a true crisis that's going on now in our profession that has been greatly exacerbated by what the president started doing when he was running and is now doing it even a higher pitch now. And he uses a term that I refuse to use and don't let any of my reporters use about news, and because there are way too many people out there who actually believe that major news organizations mostly just make stuff up and put it on the air without any vetting system and don't care because they're pursuing an agenda. There are way too many people, some of you in this room probably believe that. The problem that it isn't start with Trump. He made it much worse. Is that for too long people in our business said, "What do you mean talking about accountability? You ever hear of the First Amendment? We can do whatever we want. Don't try to criticize us. We're up here and you're down there." And that kind of attitude that people perceived from journalists alienated them from the media. And that's why I think that we need to be very quick when we make a mistake in acknowledging it, correcting it immediately. And whether it's a minor thing like spelling cherry blossoms wrong or a major error, you've got to be open with the people who are reading you or watching and saying, "Listen, we're human beings just like you. We screwed up." You've got to welcome criticism, not be defensive about it, as long as it's reasonable. I mean, there's crazy stuff obviously out there.
I think you guys have better checks than we do at the national
Thank you.
level. And I agree with you. I think you have better checks than we do at the national level. I think the problem, the concern I had and still have significantly, is I think the national level, it's going all opinion. And the problem is a lot of people giving opinion have no freaking idea what they're talking about. Right. They're up there with a talking point. I mean, I remember I told this earlier to Beth. I'm sitting there and with a lady who's really nice, great looking, so she's on air. She's, we're going back and forth about Central America, and I spent a lot of time there, and she starts talking about why everyone's coming here and the influx, blah, blah, blah. Took an angle, and I just said, it didn't make any sense. I said, really? And she, well, my studies have shown, blah, blah, blah. And I went, whoa, studies have shown. Okay, that's great. I'm glad you studied. Have you ever been there? And it was no. The answer truly was no. Not that I'm not making fun of age, young, old, female, male, it doesn't matter. But there's something to be said for our industry when we've taken away the aspect of journalism and people that actually have experienced it and putting people on the air that just have an opinion about it. We've gone that way. And I think the president, while he's as annoying as can be sometimes, I'm not saying I'm for or against him, whatever, at the same time, our industry's done just as bad. I can't tell you how many times I look at a national outlet, ours included, my old one included, a major mistake on a story, and it's like because they wanted to either rush or they wanted to take a side, and they got it wrong. And all that does is feed the anxiety on both sides, because it is both sides. This isn't the right is a bunch of idiots and the left are great, or the left are a bunch of idiots and the right are great. Candidly, they're both idiots, in my opinion. No, I'm not trying to be Mr. Middle. I'm an opinion.
No one's great.
No, I mean, the problem is we've lost that. I mean, it used to be, hey, we had disagreements, and there's truth in that Reagan and Tip O'Neill could walk and get a drink at the end of the day. We've lost that. We've lost that all, and I think, in fact, one of the things that, I think we have to go. I know we have to go.
Yep.
Well, in fact, I'm impressed with what you guys do in this, and one of the things that we did, and I'm only bringing this up just because I forgot to mention at the beginning, one of the ways I think we changed this is my niece was one of the ones killed in in Thousand Oaks. I happened to be right after I left Fox, and I went there, and I encourage you guys to do this while you're here. I don't know if you guys have time to do this, but before, and a lot of you do know each other, but before you start these events, before you start these talkbacks the next few days, is to take a minute or two beforehand and just walk around and introduce to somebody you don't know. Mm-hmm. Find the person that you look and you're like, that guy's probably a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, and shake their hand and say hello, and you watch the change. That change has to start with us at the lower level. It's not going to start at the top, clearly. It's not going to start at the top of networks or politics. So it has to come with us. So, off of what you said, I think that we have to do it ourselves.
It's a great note to end on. Thank you.
That's fun.
We have more, Tom? Clearly, I'm clueless at the program.
The caucus sessions. What room are we in? Republican caucus in room salons 1 and 2, Democratic caucus salons 3 and 6.